Hi, so I'm Mike Boss, standing here under the Dawn Redwood canopy at the Hidden Forest Nursery. We're one of Sonoma County's best kept secrets, a forest gem, a magical forest of incredible plants. The nursery has been known as Sonoma Horticultural Nursery, started 55 years ago, and it's changing its name into the Hidden Forest Nursery. It began in 1965 by Stuart and Audrey Barber, who are hybridizers of Exberry azaleas, and hence this nursery sits on Azalea Lane. Then Polo De Lorenzo took over, and he was a rhododendron hybridizer and an extraordinary horticulturalist and plantsman, and he planted everything that you see here. Everything. The only thing that he didn't plant are a couple of ancient Oregon oaks and the weeds, the blackberries and those kinds of things. But it's a horticultural wonderland, filled literally with some of the rarest trees in the country. Not a rare tree, but a really special tree are these dawn redwoods right here. And these are our largest. We have close to 100 of them on this property, making this likely the largest grove of dawn redwoods this side of the Mississippi and maybe beyond. Hard to know. But a plant that was thought to be extinct in the wild, well known from the fossil record because it had a wide distribution. So we're kind of standing under the botanical equivalent of a Brontosaurus. And then in the mid-40s, word came out of China that there was a valley that had living specimens, and word came to UC Berkeley and Harvard University, the Basil Arboretum there. And Basil Arboretum, Harvard sent an expedition into China, and they found a valley that had these specimens. So I took over the nursery about 1.5 years ago, and we are specializing in rhododendrons and azaleas. Of course, we have one of the few remaining nurseries in the state that grows their own rhododendrons and azaleas, and a lot of other plants that are called companion plants, meaning shade plants. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to bring here, is a whole diversity of plants that grow in the shade. There's so many kinds of shade. It's not like there's sun and there's shade. There's every configuration in between. There's deep shade, there's light shade, there's dappled shade, there's morning shade, there's afternoon shade, there's wet shade, there's dry shade, there's native shade, there's edible shade, and we got them all, or we are getting them all. We're growing our variety list as time permits. And then the other very interesting and a very different line of plants that we are specializing in are what I call the long-lived edibles. So things that you can actually plant your garden with. Structurally, the woody plants, trees and shrubs, and then the herbaceous perennials that'll live for many years, that not only add beauty to the garden, because beauty is food for the soul and helps people connect to nature and want to be there and take care of plants and learn about them, but not only beauty, but food, tea, herbs, or medicines. So I like to say roots, fruits, and shoots. And there's a whole section that we're developing. I'm doing this with extraordinary fruit tree expert John Valenzuela, and we have a lot of those plants available and more coming. Only have 7.5 acres, so we're going to run out of space pretty soon. Of course, there's a lot, and most of the gardens have been planted out with these amazing trees. So we have limited what we can areas of which we can grow sun-loving plants. We do have some areas for that, but this is a forest garden, shade garden, and we will be also specializing in not only edible but also native shade plants. So the concept derives from the permaculture concept of food forest gardens. food forest. What does that mean? That means not, it can be a literal forest like this, but it means things are happening on multiple levels, multi-strata, and mostly perennials, although annuals can fit into a food forest garden. And very importantly, not everything in the food forest garden is going to be edible. You want to support the ecology, the pollinator attracting plants. You need insects, bees, butterflies, and the whole microorganisms, the microfauna, the microflora, and having a diversity of plants is really important for that. So yes, shade, so the ideal plant could be shade, native plant that's pollinator and edible. And there are a few of those, but we don't need only to do native plants. And sustainability means we need food, we need to eat. And so there's a wide range of plants that will grow in this climate that can give us food and beauty and support the ecology. Win, win, win. Here's our little baby giant sequoia. Little tiny thing. 50 years old, just a baby. Supporting our local population of deer. They actually like laburnum, which is kind of interesting because laburnum seeds are poisonous. So here we are in our main greenhouse where we do a lot of our cuttings. Everything here on this side came from the forest. We have a master propagator here, Armando Garcia. So fortunate and blessed to have him here. He knows a ton of stuff and is responsible for all of this. Except for this stuff on the right side. And those are the edibles. And those are being propagated by John Valenzuela. Grapes and lemongrass. Got some ferns going on. There's more. I'm going to show you. Let's go into the other greenhouse. So this at one time was a functioning greenhouse, but the problem is that we're on the north side of redwood trees, and it's too shady to be a real functional greenhouse, except for really shade-loving plants. And so this area has been neglected for a long time. Yet we have these epiphyllums not even being taken care of, doing fabulously in this low light, hardly watered at all. Epiphyllums are the Christmas cactus. None are in bloom right now, but oh my God, they're gorgeous, gorgeous flowers. And these are some very, very special varieties. I don't even know what they are. We need to have an epiphyllum expert come in. And the other really exciting thing is here. This bed of straw and wood chip was just made by an incredible person, Taylor Bright. And she is a certified fungal geek. And we have wine cap mushrooms growing in here. 2 days ago, these were spawn was distributed in this. We just made it. And looking forward to our first crop coming soon. So many people, when people talk about farms, you want a bright area. You need sunlight, to grow fruits and vegetables. Zucchini is not going to grow in the shade. It's just going to get powdery mildew, and peaches aren't growing in the shade. The fruit that you might get, they're not going to be sweet because the sunlight is what makes the sugars. But there are a lot of plants that grow in shade that are quite useful. A lot of herbs and medicinal plants, things like wasabi and ginseng and cohosh, and you can't grow them in sun. So again, what do you got? Assess your property and do what's there. And this forest is leading me to growing into shade plants. So shade crops is going to be something that we're going to be expanding into. Yeah, we'll be doing some pruning of the forest to create some more sunnier spots. As I said earlier, there's all kinds of shade. But when you have shade crops, not sun crops. I just went to the Fuchsia Society meeting and picked up all these fuchsias. Every one of these is a different fuchsia. Really excited about the fuchsias. Really pretty flowers. One of the issues with fuchsias is there's a fuchsia mite. They create a gall, a disfiguration. San Francisco at one time, for example, was fuchsia capital of the world. And then I can't remember exactly when, but maybe in the 80s, 70s, 80s, the mite came and it devastated. There's a fuchsia dell in Golden Gate Park that's doesn't hold a candle to what it used to be because of the mite. A lot of species of fuchsias are resistant, have natural resistance to the mite. One of the problems with the species fuchsias up here is that many of them are not cold hardy. They will succumb to the frost, so you'd have to bring them in. These here are mite resistant fuchsias that are cold hardy. I got 14 different species from the Fuchsia Society, and we'll be propagating these, and we'll have them available probably this time next year. Looking forward to that. Another plant I want to have a lot of, the pineapple lily. Cool. Pineapple, because of the lily-like flowers and the foliage of Eucomis. A lot of different varieties. We'll hopefully have more of them. So here's our mother stock area for our edibles. Pomegranates, grapes, yacon, miyoga, pawpaws, taro, crowsney, a relative of the stachys, a relative of the lamb's quarters. Gets a lovely little tuber. It's white and it's fat in the internodes and very tight at the nodes, so it has this bubble-like appearance and kind of like the Michelin Man. Pretty good flavor too. And here we go to our repurposed edible area. Food forest. So everything in this section, except for the very front, are things that you can plant your garden with to give food, tea, herbs, and medicine. Jujubes. No, not those little cavity extractors that you used to eat at the movie theaters, but a Chinese date. Looks like a date, but more like texturally like a little bit crunchy like an apple, not as juicy. Really satisfying eat. I mean, if you want, if you're really a sugar addict, no. Although when they dry out, they get sweeter. But really nice thing to just munch on. We got some pluots, figs. Yeah, edible cannas. Cannas are a part sun plant. They'll take, with a lot of water, they'll take full sun. Beautiful foliage, nice red flowers, red-orange flowers. And Canna edulis has a fattened tuber. I've never had it myself. I understand it's not maybe the most delicious thing, but it's a food substitute, just kind of like taro, poi is in Hawaii. Sustained populations. It may not be the best thing, although I understand that you really have to know how to make it for it to taste good. And there are people who do that, and I'm assuming the same thing with the canna. Lemongrass, honeycrisp apples. Here's a lovely plant, epizote. We let our plant go to seed last year, and it's self-seeding in this gravel, hardly watered at all. Nice flavoring for stews. Ground cherries or gooseberries. Oh my God, this broke off, so we're going to have to take this off now. So this is a tomatillo relative. Tomatillo is what you use to make salsas and things with. They have this husk, and inside the husk, there's a lovely little golden berry. Here, have a bite. The genus Physalis. And there are quite a few different species of Physalis and a lot of varieties. So golden berries or Cape gooseberries or ground cherries. But fun, easy. In cold weather, they will die back. So we call that dieback perennial. In the Bay Area, where it doesn't freeze, they'll be evergreen all year long. Up here, where it does get freeze, they will die back to the roots, but then resprout next year. Dieback perennials, all deciduous perennials. A lot of plants are like that. Astilbes, hostas, this kind of thing. A lot of bulbs, a lot of our native bulbs, they die back not in the winter, but in the stress period, which is the summer, when there's no water to conserve. They die back, and then they wait for the rains, and then they sprout again. White sage. Yerba mate.
Wow.
Yerba mate is a ilex. That's a holly.
It's holly vine from the tropics. Tropical rainforest, South America. All the way up through Central America, yeah. I'm all about that. That's epic that you have that.
We got basils. Beautiful red basil. And then we've got holy basil. Tulsi. And adaptogenic. Stabilizing influence. And then your basil of basil. So the pesto basil. Very, very cool. One of my new favorite ornamental, a toad lily, Tricertus lanceolata from China. Toad lilies are usually shade plants. This is one that can take pretty much full sun. Lovely, lovely shade garden plant. Next to everybody's favorite, the flowering maple, abutilon. Lots of different color abutylons. So a customer at the nursery, we started talking, and it turns out he says he's an artist. I said, oh yeah, what do you make? He says, I make sculptures and planters. I said, oh, planters? I'm interested, what do you got? And he comes up with these. So these planters were made from repurposed old growth redwood. Gorgeous art pieces, and here's 3 of them. We probably have about 20 different sizes. Old growth redwood, so it's going to last a long time. Not cut down. We did not cut down any old growth redwoods to make it. They were already cut, and the wood was just going to go for scrap and function. Waste is a resource.
Sorry.
Waste is a resource. The problem is the solution. You got too much extra wood. What are you going to do with it? Let's burn it. No, let's throw it out. No, let's make art. Let's make functional art. I want to show you a project that's in the works. Here we are underneath a grove of dawn redwood trees. We are going to be making this into a really delightful place to come look and learn about plants. We recently did some thinning of the canopy to get more light in here. It was kind of dark, and a lot of things need more sunlight to be healthy. So we did a minor pruning of the limbs. We took out maybe 10, maybe 15%. We don't want to take out too much at once because then there's odd regrowth, a resprouting in weird ways. So we did the thinning, and we're going to have display tables and shelves ringing each of the redwoods. Probably be thematic, different kinds of plants, maybe geographically different. I'm not exactly sure how that will go. We're working on it, figuring out things on the way up, but that's the plan. And as I mentioned earlier, we have deer. So this area, this square, you can see a good part of it is easy to be deer fenced. So deer fencing is coming probably on a couple of days. We'll deer fence this, and then we're going to start building the shelving out, and you're going to love what we're building the shelves out of. So come here, let me show you. Nice fresh canopy. These plants are deciduous. They drop their leaves each winter. And so they come out, it's the freshest green in spring. Not that it isn't fresh now, but early spring, this place is just magical. And the nice thing about deciduous plants, so many people don't want deciduous plants in their gardens. It's like, we live in California, why not have plants that have their leaves all year? Well, when plants drop their leaves in the winter, it lets light in. So a deciduous plant gives you shade in the summer and light in the winter. That's a pretty good situation. That's tough to achieve with manual canopies and mechanics and extending and retracting shade. Let nature do it. Nature just does it. Nature knows how to take care of you. So we pruned the limbs of the dawn redwoods. So guess what we did with them? Did we chip them and make mulch? Did we ship them off to the dump? No, of course not. We saved them. And so these are going to be the structure of some of those shelving, dawn redwood shelving. Look at this wood. Don't know about it, what its properties are. Not too many people have made anything out of dawn redwoods since they were thought to be extinct until the 1940s. The oldest dawn redwoods in this country were planted in 1946, 7, something like that. So properties, not sure. We're going to find out. So here we are in the meadow. The meadow, when I arrived, was filled with tables, nursery tables, with tall stock on it, not about like this tall, and then some 15 gallons, so it didn't feel like a meadow at all. And this is the biggest, openest, sunniest part of the property. It's in the northwest corner. To the west is conservation easement, and to the north are horse pastures. It's a very, very special spot. Particularly the tree line is a atypical or not common in this part of the world. Araucaria. Araucaria, the Norfolk Island pines, or the monkey puzzle trees. And these are Araucaria angustifolia, the piranha pine. They get big cones, big spiky cones that if they fall on you, they will knock you out. And they get a big edible seed. Unfortunately, our squirrels are not that smart because they don't wait for the seeds to ripen, and they chew the cone stems off and then they fall unripened. Silly squirrels. Otherwise, we'd all have a lot to eat. A delicious nut. A few of them end up making it kind of a cross between a chestnut and a Brazil nut. And a good size, a lot of food. These are young ones, and they are just spectacular, of course. So time changes everything. And here we are underneath a Laburnum Arbor. In the heyday, earlier in the season, there will be these dangling clusters of gorgeous yellow flowers, and really, really special. But the plants around it, the trees, they do this funny thing, and that is they grow. Trees grow, and they created shade. And they created so much shade that the Laburnum Arbor is not flowering. We have laburnums on the property that do flower, but not in this much shade. So one of the projects on the long term is to do some thinning. Arbor work's not inexpensive, so little bit and at a time, but this would be a wonderful project to undertake and get some more sunlight and get this Laburnum Arbor back into shape. So come on, y'all, let's go into the swamp. Through the knee knocker area. One of the issues with this particular area is all of these irises. They are not a native species. They were planted ornamental. They got a lovely yellow flower, but they are super invasive. So one of our big projects is going to try to get rid of all of the irises and plant this out with native and super cool and edible wet plants, plants that need water. Use your resources, permaculture principles, the most effect with the least change. So you got wet, we got wet soil, plant plants that want their feet wet. Easy. Don't need to drain the swamp. Let's keep this swamp. It's a good one. So here we are on the bridge over the Blucher Creek, year-round creek, main tributary in this part of the county to the Laguna de Santa Rosa. It's fascinating geological history about this, but the entire area, including basically from Santa Rosa into the hills above Sebastopol, used to be a giant lake. And then geologic forces slowly lifted the ground, and as the ground lifted, the lake dried up, and the laguna is the puddle that remains. So a lot of the soil in this area, because it was lake bottom, is sandy, and it's very good draining soil here. There are clay pockets as well, but we're fortunate in that a lot of our soil is sandy. And when it rains heavily, this area floods, because the laguna, which is a little tiny puddle in the dry season, almost gets lake-like. It gets so much like a lake that the vineyards get covered, and so you're legally able to trespass in the vineyards in a canoe when the water is there, and it's a great habitat for birds. If you like seeing egrets and herons, get a kayak or canoe and then just and paddle out there. It's really, really gorgeous. So when it rains, like it did this year and last year, the water from the creek rises and comes up to the boards that we're standing on. And the water is gushing, it's loud. And after it stops raining in about 3 or 4 days, it goes down, 5, 6, 7 feet. But always there's water in here. So one of our projects is going to be doing stream side restoration, I hope, ecological restoration of the creek. I'll show you an area where we can talk about that later. So this is one of our reclamation project areas. This at one time was the dwarf conifer garden. And it was probably thriving a lot more when it was in full sun before a lot of these trees grew up. It had been sprawled covered with a fuchsia, a sprawling fuchsia, Fuchsia magellanica. And we pulled that out to make room, and we'll be planting these beds out. So one of our issues that we have to deal with are our four-footed friends, deer. And deer, like most mammals, like to eat. And that can be a problem. It's not a problem for rhododendrons and azaleas. Rhododendrons and azaleas are poisonous. And so they're not eaten by the deer, but a lot of other plants are. So we have our work cut out for us about what to plant where, and maybe we will be deer fencing certain areas to keep away the hoofed animals. There's plenty of them to eat besides very rare ornamental plants, tasty as they may be. Here, come over here, and we'll take a look at the stream restoration project. So we see all of these posts and the wire mesh, and that was put in here to stabilize the banks, to kind of maximize the flat area, and it did a good job on that. But what that ended up doing was making a U-shaped channel, and nature doesn't like that. It's not really good for streams. You want diversity. Diversity is a good thing on so many fronts. And ecologically, having topography that comes up and down, underwater topography, creates lots of different diverse microclimates for different organisms to do their thing in. The popular example, of course, is salmon spawning. And they do their spawning lay their eggs in shallow areas, but they swim in deeper areas. So this has been obliterated here. Now, knowing that is first step. Second step is, what do we do about it? So I'm not sure what to do about that. I'm not a stream hydrologist, and we would need people who really understood that, because I don't want to destabilize this bank, because then what happens with all these redwoods? They fall over, and it's one thing if you're out in the headwaters of somewhere, it's another thing if you're in a nursery / botanical garden. Possibly I'm thinking, or we'll investigate, removing this side bank and letting this side slough off into it. But again, I'm not a stream engineer, hydrologist. So, well, aside from the ecological principles, there's also the rules and regulations. And this is in a riparian zone, and it's protected. So here we are, one of my favorite spots on the whole property. Deep into the forest. It's quiet. It's just the forest. You can feel it washing over you. A good place to just remove yourself from the hustle and bustle of daily life. Really feel like you're in nature here. And that's one of the missions of this place, is to help connect people with nature. Some of us are naturally connected, especially people growing up in the country and in certain environments, and others, you live in the city and you just get adjusted to what you are used to and what's around you, and the hustle and the bustle and the roads and the concrete. And as Richard Louv says, we are suffering from nature deficit syndrome. This is a counter to that. Special is that to the west for 200 feet is conservation easement zone along the entire length of the property. To the north is just a horse pasture. The sounds of silence. There are actually a lot of sounds in the silence. The rustle of the leaves, the birds, the wind. Very cool thing is that there is a neighbor who has put in a video cam just on the creek on a tree there. And he's got footage of bobcat and fox, river otter, and a mountain lion. So this is a habitat corridor along the river, very special. And if you were to look at a map of Google Earth or something, there's a big area of green, forested area. It's for quite a ways. And very fortunate to be part of that.
I did an interview last night on forest bathing.
So forest bathing, we are forest bathing here every fourth Sunday, getting deep into the connection. And now wherever you are in your connection with nature, you can go deeper. And a guided walk can help you get there. Is it necessary? No, it's just like to meditate on your own. Sure, you could read a book and learn how to meditate and then go do it in your living room. But it's a little bit different when you go to a Buddhist temple or another spot where there's some kind of sanctuary and you're doing it with the group and there's a guide that can help you get deeper. Something you need to do on your own, of course, but having a guide help you get there is the beauty of guided walks of forest bathing. Every fourth Sunday, 10 to 12:30.
And we've got all the ingredients here to build your own forest bathing.
Who'd you do the interview with?
Diamond of Oppenheimer Ranch.
Oh.
He's a little much.
I don't know him.
It's a little much.
We've done it with two. Last year we started with Nicole Daspit, and she was wonderful. She's not a marketer, I'm not a marketer, and it never really kicked off. And then Caitlin Williams, I believe, is doing it now, and she'll be here tomorrow.
I interviewed a doctor in Iowa who's putting a food forest in with just a regular basically like the Eric Olson of like Des Moines, Iowa,
Uh-huh.
and he's putting in a food forest for the patients, and it's because it's medically proven.
Yeah. So the forest bathing, there's a lot of benefit. That's a really good way to feel about the forest bathing, the essence of the forest just coming and bathing you, is how different you feel when you're in a place like this, in the redwoods, in any kind of woods or forest, versus when you're in a parking lot of Costco or Safeway or BART. You just feel different. A lot of it is visual. I think a lot of it has to do with green. Green is such an appealing, soothing color to the human eye. It's right in the middle of the spectrum. And in making gardens, everyone says, oh, I want color, I want color, I want color, and a pretty flower is wonderful about that, the diversity. But foliage first, just the green, really, really helps. Like when you walk around in the redwoods, you're not going, oh, look at that flower, oh, look at that flower, like you might in some English garden, or you go to Philoli or something like that. The only thing you go ooh and on is the massiveness of the trees, but it's without knowing exactly why or looking at something you can put your finger on, it just feels good and soothing. And that's the benefit of the nature. So there's psychosomatic, you're not worrying about cars, you're not worrying about somebody else, you're just there in nature. But there's also studies that are showing that there's chemicals being given off by the trees that affect our bodies. I don't know the details of those studies. I haven't studied them, and my science mind says, okay, take a look at that, but it makes a lot of sense. We evolved with nature, and that there are chemicals and different oxygen levels and all sorts of unknown and mysterious things, and we may know exactly what it is, or we may not know exactly what it is, and that may matter or may not matter. It's just that when we feel good, we feel good, and nature can do that. And if everybody feels good, I think a lot of our problems goes away. A lot of our societal problems are caused by people who are not feeling good because they can't support themselves, because they're being taken advantage of, because they're getting sick. Nature's a cure-all.